Hi kids! Welcome to our lesson for today. So we have been talking about Elijah. And last thing we said was that Elijah was sad and he felt so sad and afraid because even though he had shown the people that God is the one true God, Jezebel was still queen. And when Jezebel is queen, he didn't know how he was going to turn the people back to God. And he felt alone. And then he even said that it doesn't matter all of the good that he has done, he should just die. But then God provided for him. And this showed Elijah that God still cared about him. Even though he's going through all of this bad time and it's a bad time for him, God still cares about him and he will still provide for him. So then Elijah went on with his journey until he got to Mount Sinai. So now let's see what happens next to Elijah.
So when Elijah got to Mount Sinai, it was getting dark. And so he found a cave and he went inside the cave so that he could sleep for the night. But then he heard a voice. And God spoke to him and asked Elijah, What are you doing here?
What are you doing here, Elijah? And then Elijah told God everything that he was feeling. So he told God, God, I am the only one left who loves you and serves you. Jezebel killed all of the rest of your prophets and she turned the people away from you. So now I am alone. And then God didn't answer. So the next thing that happened was there was this very strong wind.
It was very strong and it
was very strong and it blew
right
at the entrance of the cave and it kept blowing and blowing and it was such a strong wind that it even cracked the rocks. It even cracked the rocks. But then God was still not in the wind. So then the wind became quiet and after the wind became quiet, the ground began to shake. The ground began to shake.
Very huge earthquake. And Elijah could feel his feet trembling and the foundations trembling because the earthquake was very strong. But
God was still not in the earthquake. So then after the earthquake settled down, Elijah looked outside of the cave and he saw red light glowing everywhere because the shrubs and the bushes around the hill had caught fire and now there was a big desert fire and there was fire everywhere and now the black of the night sky was lit up with the red of the fire. But still God was not in the fire. So after the fire calmed down, Elijah had a small voice, still small voice, and that was God talking to him. So Elijah got up and he covered himself, he wrapped his face up with his cloak and then he walked out so that he could listen to the voice of God. So then when he got out, God whispered to him and he told him, what are you doing here, Elijah? So then Elijah told God again his story about how he's alone.
He was alone. He was afraid that Jezebel wanted to kill him. There was no one else.
There are no other prophets anymore. And then the people have turned away from God. Then God told Elijah, you are not the only one
left in Israel
who still loves me and serves me. There are 7,000 people in Israel who still love and serve me. And then God continued to tell Elijah all that he wanted Elijah to keep doing for him because the work of Elijah was not done yet. But then God also told Elijah
something else that was very exciting and
interesting
at that time.
So he told him, go and anoint Elisha to be a prophet after you.
So now Elijah was going to anoint Elisha to be a prophet after him, and Elisha was going to walk everywhere with Elijah, and Elisha would be Elijah's companion now, and he didn't have to feel alone anymore because now God had given him a companion and a friend who was now Elisha.
And Elisha was also going to be the prophet after Elijah's work was done. So now Elijah has a friend, he has a helper, and he has a companion, so he's not alone anymore. And God has told him that there are 7,000 people, 7,000 other people that still love and serve
God
him
in Israel.
So now Elijah knows that he's not alone, and God has given him a friend and a helper when he really needed one.
So from these children, we learn that everything we desire, everything that we think God does not know or no one cares about, God actually cares for us. even when Elijah thought that he was alone, he had no friend, God had Elisha in mind, and God knew that there were other people that loved me. So everything that Elijah thought was a reason for him to just die and not serve God was actually not a reason, because God had already sorted it out. So even as children, there are things that we sometimes feel like God does not know, no one understands. God actually does understand what we feel, even in your fears, when you're happy. As we said, God cares and He understands everything that we want and everything that we need. So for us, it's just to pray and believe God that everything we want, everything we need, or anything we desire, it's actually God who provides for us. Even our very friends, it's God who gives us our friends. So now we're going to stand up and sing our song. So let's all stand up and sing this song.
It's time for us to sing our song. Now, we've just talked about how Elijah went up to Mount Sinai and he hid in a cave to sleep, and how there was so much wind, and then there was such a loud and strong earthquake, and then there was so much fire. And in all of this, God's voice wasn't in any of them, but it was a still small voice that came to Elijah and told him that he's not the only one who loves and serves God. So now we're gonna sing a song about how we're going to hear God's voice even through all of the trials and all the big things that happen in our lives, and all the storms of life. Yes. We still have to find the still small voice of God and listen to it. So everyone stand up and help us sing this song. Hide me now under your wings. Cover me within your mighty hands. When the oceans rise and thunders roll, I will soar with you above the storm. Father, you are king over the flood. I will be still and know you are God. When the oceans rise and thunders roll, I will soar with you above the storm. Father, you are king over the flood. I will be still, know you are God. I will be still, know you are God. Yay! Okay, kids, it's time for us to do our craft. We've just talked about how Elijah went to Mount Sinai and it was dark when he got there, so he went into a cave. And then God asked him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And then Elijah told him, "I'm alone, no other prophets are alive, Jezebel killed all of them, and your people have turned away from you." And he explained how he was very, very sad about this.
Yes.
But then there was a strong wind, and the wind was so strong it even cracked rocks. But God was not in the wind. And then there was an earthquake, and it was so strong it shook the foundation of the mountain, but God was not in the earthquake. And then there was fire that raged, and suddenly it burnt and it burnt and it burnt. It was so bright and so red, but God was not in the fire. And then God was a still small voice that came to him after everything had calmed down.
Yes.
And that is when God spoke to Elijah.
Yeah.
So to remember all of this, we're going to create a picture with all of these things, the wind and the fire and the earthquake,
Yes.
and Elijah, and then God speaking to Elijah.
Yes. So what I did is I took my manila paper and I drew the 3 things that came before God spoke to Elijah. So I have wind right here, then I have a fire, and then I have the earthquake that came. So that is what you need to draw. And then I have Elijah standing right there at the mountain, and he's wondering, where is God? If he's not in the wind, he's not in the fire, he's not in the earthquake, then where is God? And then I have a few other small pieces of manila paper where I'm going to write the questions. I'll tell you what the questions are, but just keep them aside for now. So for now, what I'll do is I'll color all the three things in my picture so that it makes sense. So the first one is the wind. I think I'll color it blue. So just color it blue. And the next one was the fire. So I'm going to take my orange color and just create fire. And the last one is the earthquake. And so that's what I'm going to color. And then we need to color Elijah's clothes and Elijah himself. So that is what I'm doing. Okay, so now we need to know what we have done. So the pieces of paper that we put aside, I'll take them, and then on each paper, I'll write the three things that happened before God could speak to Elijah. So the first thing that happened is the wind that was so strong, and as it blew like right at the entrance of the cave where Elijah was. And so I'm going to write, is God in the wind? I don't think he's in the wind. So that is what I'm going to write, because these are the questions Elijah was asking himself. So is God in the wind? The next one is God in the fire? And then the third one is God in the earthquake? And then the last one is the question that Elijah was asking himself, where is God? So we need to put all these pieces together to make sense out of our craft. So I'll just take my glue stick. You can use a stapler, or you can use a normal glue, the liquid glue. Just stick the questions to where the item on the question is. So for example, this one is the wind, so I'll just put it right where my wind was, right there. And the next one is God in the fire, so that is what I'll do. So I'm going to put glue on it and then stick it back. The third one is God in the earthquake. So I'll put it right there. The last one is a question that Elijah was asking himself. Where is God? And so, if you notice, I folded all my papers because I'm sure Elijah thought that when there was a strong wind, God must be there. And then he looked and God was not there. And then the big fire was there. And then he looked, but God was not in the fire. And then he looked after the earthquake, and he found that God was not in the earthquake. But where was God? And I'm sure by now you're able to answer that question. So what I'm going to write, like right at the bottom here, is I'll write, Elijah is in the mountains, but where is God? And you're supposed to answer that question by now because we already know. I hope you do. Okay, so the answer to this question, you're supposed to give it, but so that you can find it, you have to go and read from the book of 1 Kings, chapter 20. That is where you'll find that story.
Chapter 21.
Chapter 21, sorry. Chapter 21. 1 Kings 21. That's where you'll find the story of the fire, the wind, and the earthquake. And the answer is God was in the still small voice. So I'm going to write my answer right here so that I don't forget. Shall say God is in the still small voice. So that's my answer. I hope you're able to find your answer, and make sure you write and answer that question right there. Shira, did you find your answer?
God is in the still small voice.
Yes, God is in the still small voice. So that's our craft today. You have all the questions. You can look for God in all these things. But no, he's not in the fire. He's not in the earthquake. He's not in the wind. God is in the still small voice. Okay? So that's our craft today. Until next time, bye.